Welcome, everyone. My name is Brady. I'm the director here at the Muse, Lake Louise Museum, Douglas Family Art Center. And we are very pleased today to be welcoming Steve Ulrich. He will be talking about some of his methods, some of his work here in town. To back up a little bit, he'll be talking and speaking to crime prevention through environmental design. So not a reactive approach, but an approach where you try to kind of head things off the path. So a really kind of neat way of doing things. Steve's been doing this for many, many years. He's going to talk a little bit about that. And we're quite excited. I'm quite excited to see some of his work. He's coming up to the end of his 3 months here in town. And if you've been driving around town at 5 a.m., first of all, but you may have seen him walking around and taking in the sights and sound. So we're very excited to have him here at the museum. Really interested to hear about his work. Before we go any further, if you do need a washroom, it's just like back there. The exits are right here, and also a lot of metal. And there's one on the back that's the same color as this railing. But without any further ado, I'll call Steve up, and we'll hear all about the project. So Steve, come on up.
All right. Thanks a lot. Pretty good turnout for a nice summer day. Yeah. So, I mean, I've been introduced. I won't spend a lot of time on that. I'm always curious to know how many crime prevention experts are in the room? Raise your hand. How about artists? Raise your hand.
What type?
Any artist. Fabulous. Fabulous. So the other thing I'll mention is that I'm not a thief. I'll share a little bit about my background, but I want to assure you I'm not a thief, but I did steal the idea of these artist residencies, thinking to myself through COVID and the pandemic that, geez, that could work for us. Doing a community safety practitioner in residence. So that's what this is all about, the work that's going on here. It's not the first residency I've done. I did a larger one in Victoria. I don't know if you could term that a residency because I actually lived in Victoria for about 8 years, but it was considered a 6-month residency. I also did some similar work in Kelowna, in Nanaimo, and now I suspect quite a bit more of this work in Eastern Canada. I do travel quite a bit, and it really just allows me to see the country and, unfortunately, all the chaos within the country. But of course, our American friends have plenty of chaos there as well. Particularly, I would think today, after the attempted assassination. And I've worked overseas as well. So what I'm going to do today is not so much talk specifically about crime prevention, but I'm going to talk about creativity and how it impacts, the work that I do. And I think what's so interesting about that is that, people always say, well, Steve, you're not an artist. But I am creative, and it does set me apart from most of the consultants that I've worked with over the years. And it's been very advantageous, as you'll see in the presentation. So my background is very diverse, which has really allowed me to look through a number of different lenses over the years. So I started as a young man wanting to be a police officer, so I studied justice administration with a major in police science. It's called criminology now. I worked a lot through college with the Calgary Police Service. I did my practicum, amazingly enough, my policing practicum in New York with NYPD. That was back in the 80s when that city was still very dangerous. It's certainly improved a lot over the years. I left policing quite early. I found that policing is very reactive, as I'm sure you realize. It's not what I would call proactive, and generally there isn't a lot of prevention work going on. So, you know, that leaves that work up to the rest of us. And when I say the rest of us, I really mean that, because crime prevention is everybody's business. We can't leave it solely up to the police. We need to work with the police and assist the police where we can. So when I left policing, I worked for a number of years in corrections. So you could almost say jump from the frying pan into the fire. Worked a lot with high-risk youth. And then when I left that role, I found myself in corporate security roles. So very much different from my look now. It was suit and tie, short hair, big business, protecting assets. And then I had the opportunity, after doing that for a number of years, to just start my own company. So I've been consulting, I've been consulting many years, but I guess officially since about 2008, when I started my consulting firm. So that has really morphed into more what I would call community safety and well-being, which is why I'm here, and what I'll talk a little bit about today. I always like, if there's questions as I move through the presentation, feel free just to raise your hand. I'll do my best to answer your question, but I'm happy to take questions at the end of the presentation as well. So this is the main reason why I'm in your community. This is a methodology called crime prevention through environmental design. You can see the definition up there now. I started studying this in 1999 and studied under, I would consider him the leading expert, world leading expert on it, Timothy Crow, who passed away a number of years ago. Tim and I remained good friends over the years, but there's certainly other experts in the field as well. And there's a number of different certifications that one could hold as part of this methodology. I hold probably 6 or 7 different designations, so very specific to things like high-rise buildings and that type of thing. So the interesting thing, I guess, about that definition, I always break it down for people, right? Because what we're talking about today is very much the built environment. But important aspects of this, that really get people excited about it, is the fact that it can lead to a reduction in the fear. So, and we know there's plenty of fear out there, right? People are fearful these days, particularly in downtowns. And the potential for it to reduce crime as well and improve quality of life. And I would argue that, there isn't anybody that I can think of that doesn't want to improve their quality of life. But here's what I'm going to focus on today is creativity. First thing to go are the eyes. So I'll get a little closer to read this for you, because you might not be able to see it either. If you don't fashion an environment where creators and originators can get things going, you won't have any new ideas. It's really that simple. So one of the things I was really I'm training a local team. It's being referred to in the newspaper as the neighborhood empowerment team. So it's a good balance of people between city, police, and community. A really good balance of people that will carry this work forward once I leave at the end of the residency. So I was telling them about this documentary. It actually, if you want to look it up or try and find it yourself, it's called The Creative Brain. It's phenomenal, really well done. It was on Netflix for a while, but I wasn't able to find it on there. So what we're going to talk about specifically today is placemaking. So there's a couple of methodologies that we use in our work. One of them, of course, is the definition that I provided just a minute ago on crime prevention through environmental design. But the other methodologies we use are placemaking and healthy built environment toolkits. And these are the 3 methodologies that the neighborhood empowerment team are learning. And I'll read the definition as well, is the process of creating a built environment that fosters community, stimulates interaction, encourages entrepreneurship, supports innovation, and nurtures humanity. So it's a pretty wide scope you're looking at there, but I think the bottom line is that we want to create a caring community. Not everybody can read street art and graffiti that easily. This isn't really graffiti, but it has some of that style incorporated into that wall mural, which is in Victoria. So storytelling is pretty powerful stuff anymore. Richard Wagamese is one of my favorite authors. He passed away a number of years ago as well. And he says essentially that, I'll share the full quote with you at the end of the presentation, but that we are all story. Within each and every one of us, we hold history and we hold stories. And those stories are powerful. So I'm going to share a few with you this afternoon. So that's me in the middle. My hair was a little bit shorter. But you can see the gray starting to come in there. And I'm with all these young bucks up on that scaffolding. So I guess it would be to your left, you'll see Jesse Goucher, and right beside him, Stephen Birch. And that's a pretty powerful story in itself, just to those two young men, and the transition that they've made over the years, because they were two of probably the most prolific taggers, graffiti taggers, in Red Deer, which is in central Alberta between Calgary and Edmonton, for a number of years. I engaged them in a project called Art Alley in Red Deer while I lived there. I was managing that project for about 5 years, so 5 summers in a row. And to make a really long story short, the project was all about creating murals in back alleys, in laneways, which we can appreciate if they're not activated or not used, can become quite dangerous and fearful. You don't see a lot of people in Kenora or anywhere walking through back alleys. So we wanted to change that in Red Deer. So it started just with some basic sketches that the artists did. You can see the detail in some of those sketches, and ironically, it's a dragonfly. If you know anything about the symbolism of the dragonfly, it's all about transformation. So we were able, over those 5 years, truly to transform those laneways in Red Deer. So this was one of the first murals that we got underway. That's not the finished project, but it certainly shows you the color and the detail within that mural. I'm going to share some others as well that were also part of the Art Alley project. Go ahead.
Where do you get the funding for the paint and everything?
Yeah, that's a good question. Where do you get the funding? The funding can come from a number of sources. Part of the funding came from the city. Okay. Part of the funding came from businesses. And essentially, over that 5 years, it was amazing. We hardly paid for any paint at all because Benjamin Moore had a program at the time that supported mural projects. So a lot of the paint, I would say probably 80% of the paint was paid for and given to us by Benjamin Moore. There were also some local art shops that provided things like spray paint and other materials, because a lot of these artists, this, for example, with the exception of the backdrop, the lettering, these musicians which are featured on the wall, most of that is done, amazingly enough, with a spray can. Yeah. So this gives you a little closer look at it at night. But, you know, as far as the stories, this was a powerful one because that laneway in Red Deer was quite problematic. So we ended up with this dance troupe that wanted to do some filming at night in front of that mural. So it changed the alley significantly, whereby now people aren't afraid, to walk down that alley. And there's many more stories around that. We're going backwards now for some reason. Oh, hit the right key, Steve. So here's another one. So all local artists were engaged in the project. And my argument is I would much rather see color on the walls and no graffiti than a blank wall full of graffiti. Now this one, if I recall, is in Peace River. It's interesting recalling some of the stories too and where all these pictures are from. Most of these are from right across the country. So, this is the argument. You can have a blank wall like that where there's no engagement and lots of problems in a back lane and full of graffiti. Or, you can have that. I vote this. A lot more colorful, and it creates work as well for local artists. So another story I'll share is one about a piano. So in 2010, I really had no idea what I was doing at the time. I turned 50 in 2010, and of course, you've got people that are saying, "Well, Steve, what do you want for your birthday?" And I said, "Well, I'm gonna buy a piano. You could pitch in if you want and donate a little bit of money towards the piano." And they gave me a really funny look because I don't play the piano. In fact, I don't play any instrument. So they thought this was a little bizarre. But essentially, the idea came from an artist by the name of Luke Jerram. And in New York City, he was putting street pianos, painted street pianos, all through the parks in New York, particularly Central Park. And I thought, wow, that's phenomenal. We could do that in downtown Red Deer. And I said to the local inspector of the RCMP at the time, I said, where are the most calls for service as far as you're concerned, the most problematic area, downtown Red Deer? So he said, well, we go to a lot of calls right on the main drag here it was called Ross Street. And I thought, oh, that'll make a great name for a piano too, the Ross Street Piano. So essentially, this is Brian Usher, a local artist in Red Deer who's now in California doing really amazing art. He started painting the piano that I had purchased. Now you can't quite tell what he's painting there yet, but this was the end result. And again, for anybody that's not well-versed in street art and graffiti, can you tell me what that says?
The arts.
The arts. Very good. Yeah. So the arts can be a very powerful thing. That project grew into what is now known as the Ross Street Patio. So a simple piano being placed in a problematic area of downtown now becomes an entire full street patio running along one of the main drags in downtown Red Deer called Ross Street. So this is how projects evolve. And it really is a beautiful thing because now you have, I wouldn't even be able to venture a guess between the levels of activity that were downtown at one point and the levels of activity that are downtown now because of that piano and because of this patio. It was a game changer. And you can see now that, well, you might not be able to see, but they closed off an entire lane of traffic. They eliminated all of the diagonal parking on one side of the street, right in front of the businesses, which honestly, in the beginning, was a concern because, Businesses don't want to give up that parking right in front of their door. But what they found was that the street patio, with all its programming, created a lot of activity, and those people were more than willing to park a block or two away and walk into the area. It really is beautiful. If you're ever there, I would encourage you to visit. And these pianos, we did a number of them. We did probably 4 or 5 other street piano projects. You can see the one there, they've got that summer selfie, you know, so you can sit down at the piano, maybe with somebody who's playing it, and take a selfie. But it's pretty powerful. The other one, the more colorful one with the bench behind it, is one we did in Calgary. And it just changes the whole dynamic of the streetscape and the public realm when you can bring people to these spaces. You know,
how long a time, because is that when they're new? And how long do you leave the piano out if it doesn't create any?
It's a great question. Yeah, how long can you leave a piano out? Of course, pianos like this don't weather that well, so they're not out in the winter. They're out through the summer months. And as you'll have seen in another slide, there's different ways to protect a piano as well. So in Red Deer, for example, we used a bus shelter with a roll-down shutter door. It was amazing, too, that the local businesses and the people that were stewards of that piano. So if it rained, for example, they would come out of the business and they would roll down the shutter door. I lived downtown at the time. I'll share a story as well about a homeless man that had not played a piano in probably 20 years. And I heard this beautiful music one morning, and I walked out the door of my apartment, which wasn't far from the piano, so I could hear him playing. And when I walked down to greet him, he had a canister of Lysol wipes, and he was cleaning off all the keys on the piano. So he had taken ownership of this piano. He was a steward. So plenty of other projects I'll share. Murals don't have to be on walls, they can be on streets. This is one I worked on with the Greater Victoria Placemaking Network. And it was also an area that they wanted to activate. So you might be able to see the ping pong table in there. It's got a lot of materials and stuff on top of it. But when this project was completed again, you know, you had all kinds of people now coming to this space to play ping pong or just have their coffee and just hang out. We're only limited by our own creativity, right? So this was a form of traffic calming. You'll see the sign there on the pole, please slow down. But essentially they engaged a lot of kids and youth to do this artwork right on the poles, which, you know, as you were driving along, you would see it and hopefully slow down. Here's one that was done right on the road, ironically without permission of the city. Sometimes this is referred to as guerrilla urbanism, where the neighborhood just got fed up with people speeding through this section of the neighborhood. They organized, and the next thing you knew, the police department was supporting it and you know, blocking off traffic and diverting it around until the project was done. It was beautiful, absolutely beautiful. We see things like this. I mean, we talk about benches all the time. Benches downtown, here, there, and everywhere. Are they problematic? Well, they can be. You probably have seen potentially in a few of the articles or things coming out about what's called hostile architecture. I'm not a big fan of it because it's not inclusive. It's just simply not inclusive. So when I see hostile architecture, the first thing I start thinking is, okay, well, how creative can we be to actually change that? So this is a beautiful bench that local artists, again, got together. You can see how it's sculptured and there's tile work involved in it. It's also very comfortable. Not all benches are comfortable. I've seen a few, we call them little free libraries. I've seen some of the little free libraries around Kenora. Got very excited about that. I thought, okay, well, they're not just in Victoria. But this again is something that I think really can add some creativity and vitality to the neighborhoods. I've seen a couple of great spots where I was almost expecting to see a little free library here, but I didn't. So there's tons of potential. And of course, it led to, when you see the map here, all the little free libraries in Victoria are now mapped, plotted on this mapping. And they just had their 100,000 books have been circulating through these little free libraries. 100,000 books. That's a lot of books and a lot of sharing. Again, you know, I often work downtown, in downtowns, but it's not to say that there aren't issues in neighborhoods. This was a fella who continually had his graffiti, his garage door was being tagged. So he just decided, okay, well, enough of that jazz. He hired a local artist, and they did this on his garage, which is beautiful. And, you know, when I followed up with that resident, he said, you know, I no longer have any problem with nobody tags it. Because there is this certain level of, I call it a street respect among artists. So very rarely will you see a mural tagged. I'm not saying it doesn't happen, but it's quite rare. Again, if you want to talk creativity, you know, here's another mural. This one's in Red Deer, where ironically there were a lot of cars being stolen, and still are being stolen around the country. Now you might think those are real windows in that apartment, but they're not. That's a mural. But it does imply that there are people watching the street, eyes on the street, which is a famous, Jane Jacobs, an urbanist and a writer, used to always talk about eyes on the street. So this is just done through art, which is amazing. Some other areas that I was, you know, I'm always impressed because of my travels and what I see. You know, you've got a few areas like this in Kenora where you've got lots that are completely barren between two buildings. And this was exactly what had happened in Medicine Hat until some local people got together in the businesses, and they created just this amazing space in this blank space with nothing in it except garbage and dirt. And turned it into this. So there's murals on both sides of the walls. They've got little patios and musicians play in that space. They completely activated it through the arts. It's amazing. Here's a fence made out of skis. You know, this is in Revelstoke. You can be as creative as you want about these things, right? And I see it across the country, which is such a blessing. I don't want to get going on public washrooms because that's quite a hot topic here, and honestly, it is everywhere. Some municipalities do a good job of it. Other municipalities are struggling with that issue. But again, I would argue if you're activating the space around those public washrooms, they're not nearly as problematic. This one you'll see, I'm not sure if you can see that, but the kids can drum on there, or the xylophone. So again, and next to it is a splash park. So you can create this activity right around those public washrooms that really just creates a whole new dynamic to that public space. You know, we see things like electrical boxes and garbage cans just look terrible, right? Graffiti all over them and just filthy. These are interesting projects as well. We're starting to see a lot more graphic wraps used on electrical boxes or traffic control boxes. Even artists painting garbage containers and things like that. The beauty is it looks better. And as far as the graphic wraps, again, you could be employing local artists to design those graphic wraps and make it very much Kenora, about Kenora, whether it's the history of Kenora or whatever it might be. And when they are tagged, it's really simple to clean off just because of the way those wraps are designed. We see them everywhere now. These are two, if you've been out to the West Coast, this is in Sydney, which is just not far from the Schwartz Bay ferry terminal. So a couple that were done there. Here's my partner, JC, who's also with me on this trip. She spent hours playing those railings, musical railings. So much fun. We parked in the parkade that night to go for dinner, and we missed our reservation because she was still busy playing the railing. So it's simply based on touch. And all the lights would go, and it was a lot of fun. And, you know, fun, nothing wrong with that. Having fun in your community, downtown, what could be better? Abandoned buildings in really, really poor shape. All the windows boarded up. Looks like hell. What do you do? Well, this is what Medicine Hat artists did. We got John Wayne there, Luke Skywalker. It's just a great space to enjoy and celebrate. Again, where is this? This will be in Kelowna. Did quite a bit of work in Kelowna over the years as well. You know, we could have a blank wall within the downtown core amongst all these condos, just a gray cement slab, or we can have color. I vote color and art every time. We don't have to be limited to murals and things like that, or pianos. This is, I always call this Operation Hydration Station. So this is just a simple sculpture that was done by an artist, but it's a water fountain. More sculptures. Why cut down a tree completely when you can use it as a sculpture? And then there's, you know, other ways of activating public space as well. This is in Santa Monica. I was attending a conference there and working a little bit with Santa Monica Police at the time. And I loved this space. Giant chessboard, and you can see the smaller chessboards all designed into the tables. This was very early morning, so I didn't expect to see a lot of people there, but when I came back, wow, there was probably 100 people in that area, which is a beautiful thing to see. People enjoying public space, feeling safe, having conversations, playing games. This is another great space in Calgary. That was a parking lot, completely unused, a parking lot just sitting there. They decided to activate that space with shipping containers. So you can see how colorful those shipping containers are. The smaller ones at the back there, bright colors, all of those open up and vendors can rent them through the summer months. Artists can show their work. It's a fantastic space to enjoy. On the other side there, the double shipping containers, that is actually a stage for musicians to play on. All the equipment, the sound equipment, everything can be locked within those shipping containers. I saw them set up that stage in about 45 minutes. It didn't take long. even fences, you know, I always say this was a fella in Victoria that I spoke with a number of times, and he was just fed up with always painting his fence, you know. Taggers would come along in the middle of the night with a spray can and just run paint all the way down the fence as they walked by, or worse, you know, tagged it with something really inappropriate. So he, again, engaged a local artist to do this. Now, you might not be able to see in and out of the yard, which I often refer to as natural surveillance, being able to see in and out of spaces for safety reasons. But it did eliminate his issue of graffiti on that fence. Something else I think could be something Kenora thought about, and maybe you do. I've only been here 3 months, so I'm still learning. But this is walks, community walks that I generally do each year based on Jane's walks. We're back to Jane Jacobs. So in May every year around the world, there are these walks that communities do. In Victoria, it's a big deal. There's probably 20 or 30 of those walks that are organized. I like to organize mine based around the methodology that I opened the talk with, crime prevention through environmental design, because it allows me, as we walk through laneways and different areas of the community, to really talk about some of the things I've shared here with you today that are more creative. So again, placemaking, I love this definition, is turning a neighborhood, town, or city from a place you can't wait to get through to one you never want to leave. I think that's just beautiful, because I know of all the different places I've traveled, and I know the places that I want to go back to, and I know the places I don't want to go back to, right? So I think Kenora has a huge, huge opportunity here to really plot a new course forward. And this is the quote I'm going to leave you with here, and then I'll take some questions. This again is Richard Wagamese. All that we are is story. From the moment we are born to the time we continue on our spirit journey, we are involved in the creation of the story of our time here. It is what we arrive with. It is all we leave behind. We are not the things we accumulate. We are not the things we deem important. We are story, all of us. What comes to matter then is the creation of the best possible story we can while we're here, you, me, us, together. When we can do that, and we can take the time to share those stories with each other, we get bigger inside. We see each other. We recognize our kinship. We change the world, one story at a time. So thank you. I think Kenora is about to create a new story. I hope. I'm always hopeful when I leave these projects. Any questions? Let's start here.
Okay. Maybe not all that positive. My work life brought me to the idea that a lot of these projects, yep, they're there. Some of them, I guess you'd call it a maintenance issue.
Right.
Pianos, books seem to have a life of their own, which is interesting.
Right.
But the piano project, I don't know if you're aware, it was done here. I think probably inspired by you, the work you did.
Could be.
By another Steve, by the way.
Yes.
I don't know if you're aware of him or not. Or
I am. I haven't met with him yet, but I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah. And he tied up, similar to what you did, he tied up with another musician who was really good with pianos, rebuilding,
right,
tuning, the whole bit. But I think they suffered burnout maybe?
Could be.
Like, I was just wondering if you had any resolve for any of those issues.
Absolutely. So you brought up two good questions. One of them is maintenance. because maintenance is one of the supporting principles of crime prevention through environmental design. So you need to be able to maintain these projects. And the best way to do that is to create that stewardship and the interest in the project. So in other words, I use the example of the street piano in Red Deer, where a business owner located right near the piano, a number of them actually, who had keys. We never did lock it, by the way, but they would come out and roll the door down. I did hear about one of the pianos here being damaged. It was turned over, I believe. And possible burnout is another issue. But I always say, you know, don't give up. Go back to the drawing board. We mounted those pianos on a platform, so there was no turning it over. Even if the roll down door was up, you couldn't just reach in and turn the piano over. So there's, you know, we learn, thank goodness, from our mistakes. And my argument is always, don't give up on those projects. Just go back to them and see if you can do something differently. And having one or two people solely responsible is another, it's challenging, right? So if there was burnout, maybe more people had to be involved in that. Engage the local businesses. I always say, you know, the businesses, one of the things that came out in the survey here that Christian Sadler did was that 87% of those people that responded to that community safety survey said, you know, they were willing to roll up their sleeves and help. But the key is, first you've got to unbutton your sleeves, you know? You've got to be willing to unbutton your sleeves and get to work. It's a community affair, everybody's business. I think there was another question. Yeah.
I hate to be the one to bring it up, but what you do about winter?
Yeah. So winter, we can make that a challenge or an obstacle, or we can find our way past that. So the example I would use there is the Ross Street patio that I spoke of earlier is in central Alberta, where I lived for 12 years. The winters were like -30. It was like snow, just like it is here, more or less. They were not fun. I think what's interesting is that the community decided, so the city was actually taking that patio apart every fall. They would take it all apart, store everything, and then in the spring put it all back. Finally, it got to the point where the community said, why? Why are we taking this apart year after year? Let's just program the space year round, and they have. So now there's things like ice sculpturing. There's lots of different activities for the kids through the winter. I mean, obviously they try to do that on warmer days, maybe not -35 or -40, but the argument is I think you just need to activate the space and make a commitment to it. Yeah.
What's the population of Medicine Hat versus Kenora, though? I mean, Medicine Hat has many more people to help out.
Yeah, so Red Deer is about 100,000 people. Yeah.
Yeah, so we like, in the winter, we're like 15, 16,000, if that.
Yeah.
If that.
Again, I would
There's
engage.
a big turnout, I mean, a big
Yeah.
burnout system there.
Yeah, again, I think something like that, the city plays a role in programming, the businesses play a role, local artists and musicians play a role. Everybody's got to get on the same page. Yeah. Question behind you?
Well, I'm wondering how you found some great ideas. I mean, we did all the murals, they're all around town. But downtown is leaving. We can't get people to work in restaurants. All the businesses are leaving. The downtown is being taken over by community services. The courthouse is right there, you know. Some of these ideas, I mean, have been tried, but there's something fundamental else before that has to happen in Kenora, before these ideas that you have
Right.
take charge.
I would agree and disagree. I'm not going to say for a minute that they're not challenging. Every city across this country, every downtown right now is challenged. Every one of them that I've been to. So I would encourage you to stay positive, and I would encourage you to be creative and not give up. And the other thing I would say to that is, very rarely do we ever not involve people with lived experience in these projects. So by that I mean somebody who has been homeless or has been addicted. We involve them in those projects. Why do you think we do that? We do it because it creates the ownership. Yeah.
They have been involving.
Yeah. Yeah. So I guess I would just encourage you not to give up. Go ahead.
What kind of incentives, I guess, were offered to the artists to participate? And that's kind of a two-part question. And then, because these look like quite established, talented artists, but I can see in Kenora the opportunity, to bring people in from the streets who may be to be part of that project, and certainly get them involved in that ownership. But many of them may not have the artistic ability, and can they be involved somehow? Can they be trained and learn?
Yeah. Wow, we've had some great questions. That's another good one. I think the city would have to get behind this. Arts councils, businesses. There would be honorariums, as there was for the Red Deer Art Alley project over that 5 years. And again, there's just certain aspects of that creativity piece whereby, somebody thought just to, well, I'm just going to go to the paint store and ask. And the next thing we knew, there was this Benjamin Moore support of mural projects, right? So I really think it's important to engage local artists and musicians. And, I don't believe they should just be expected to come out and do this work without being compensated fairly, nor should anybody. I think whatever we offer up in the community, unless we decide as an individual to volunteer, I think we need to be compensated for the ideas we have and the work we do. It's important. Yeah. Any other questions?
What sort of budgeting numbers can you come up with? Are you looking at $100,000 a year, or $10,000 or $500,000?
In my experience, that number of about $100,000 a year it's amazing what you can do with $100,000.
Okay.
And the unfortunate thing over a number of years with the Art Alley project in Red Deer was eventually that funding ran out. It ran out for, I think, maybe a year or two, and then but it's all in place again. They could see the benefits, and they wanted more murals down there. So now, very much like the little free libraries, they've plotted the murals all through the downtown, whereby it's actually created tourism. People will go to the Downtown Business Association and get a brochure and walk the laneways. Yeah.
Let me extend this idea of murals. It was mentioned here that there was a time when good walls had good murals on them.
Mm-hmm.
They were historically relevant, and you'd be proud to be part of it.
Right.
That seems to have drifted away. What you're illustrating here is a different kind of art.
Right.
Is that in fact a one-for-one replacement? We use the same sizes of the same buildings, just change the technique, change the subject.
I think ideally, I'd like to see a combination of both. I've looked at some of the murals here. They're beautiful. Some of them require a little bit of maintenance now because they're older, which is an important aspect of these projects and the budgets as far as maintenance and certain things you can apply, UV protectants. And if somebody was to tag it again, it would come off a little easier. So yeah, go ahead.
I think one of the things that I find really exciting, Steve, with what you're showing us, that's maybe a little different than some of the things that were done in the past, where I think the murals were always painted on our big, bold, most known, vibrant buildings, where I love it. But I think it's Second Street, for instance, in the back alleys of Second Street.
Right.
Like creating an artist alley in the back lanes of that street that is somehow got ownership and investment and people, it'd be huge. It'd be
Yeah.
transformative. And it's using the space in a different way.
Yeah.
Right?
Well, and I'm excited to tell you that those conversations are underway. They are underway. So,
It's taking people into places they don't go, right?
Mhm.
And that's where we create, I mean, I even found that find in downtown Winnipeg, I feel less safe in downtown Winnipeg than downtown Toronto because there's people on the streets.
right.
You know, and that's where I think
Right.
we're hurting here in a way as people aren't on the street.
You know, when I'm going to be presenting in Banff this October for a big criminal justice conference, and I do quite a bit of lecturing and teaching on this subject. And one of the things I often say is, ideally, you want to create safe activities in unsafe places. And I get this strange look all the time when I say that, but it's true. You want to bring that positive engagement and activity to your streets. The more people that enjoy these spaces, the less dangerous and the less fearful they are. Yeah. So maybe I'll just end on that note. And I thank you very much for attending today.